It's time for the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast, your District 1 and 2 stop down each week in the state of Idaho. Brandon Baney joined by Ryan Scaggs, water pole as always. You
gotta hydrate.
So every time, if you're watching the video of this on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Ryan always takes a swig of water right as I'm bringing him on camera, on screen, to talk. You're kind of like, do you ever watch Sunday Night Football on NBC?
Yeah.
And how Chris Collinsworth always slides in on
it's like slides into the side, into the frame.
That's your Chris Collinsworth thing, is drinking the water when I bring you in.
I hope I'm a little bit better than Chris Collinsworth, but I'll it's all good.
The thing about this guy is he's just special.
Well, he can really take it to him. I mean, he's almost like John Madden, but without the effect.
He's like John Madden, but without all of the lovable traits that made people love.
Yeah,
John
exactly.
Madden.
Exactly. Yeah. He's John Madden, except he's easy to hate. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So, anyways, with Chris Collinsworth, I'm Brandon Baney, and this is the North Idaho Prepcast. We got we had a lot of
dress up like Harry. I'll have to dress up like Harry Carey one of these days.
Oh my gosh! For Halloween we should do.
That would be fun.
Next year,
or like Marv Albert.
People, right? Dress up as your favorite sportscaster.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Get a tweed jacket.
I'll dress up as Wayne DeZuback, former IdahoSports.com broadcaster.
Like Howard Cosell. Yeah.
Anyways, we'll get it reined back in here. We're
nerding over as broadcasters. Yes, we'll stop.
Right. Yeah, you can tell we're broadcast nerds because we're talking about all the different commentators and whatnot. Okay, we are smack dab in the middle of spring sports, and really, I wanted to start this week on the track and field side of things. Friendly reminder, we're recording this on Wednesday, April 19th. Tomorrow, April 20th, on IdahoSports.com, we will have our newly updated Tracking the Field. I will get up super early tomorrow, drink about 7 cups of this, and compile all of the new projections based upon the statewide leaderboards in track and field, 5A all the way down to 1A, boys and girls. We also list the top individual in each event for each classification as well. It takes a while to do, but we've gotten really good response and feedback from it so far, and I enjoy doing it. The adding up of the numbers isn't too complicated. You can't score more than 10, so for me, it's easy math because I struggle otherwise. But with that said, we wanted to take a look at what's been happening in North Idaho for track and field, because specifically over the weekend at the Pasco Invitational in the Tri-Cities area in Washington, Post Falls went over and competed, did really well. A lot of North Idaho teams were there, but Post Falls girls kind of take the story here because another school record has fallen at Post Falls High.
Yeah, they got the school record in the distance medley, which was pretty impressive. A record, I believe, that was broken last year or the year before last. So it didn't last too long before this group, showed up and broke it this year. But, Anna Peters has been on an absolute tear. And, we look at what that group's doing. But Capri Sims has been dominant in the field events too. So, Post Falls has been showing up and showing out on the girls' side. And then on the boys' side, they've been, pretty competitive as well, especially in the 200. Kobe Cameron had a 22.6 in the 200 at Pasco as well. But Lake City looked really good too on the boys' side, but we'll talk about them in a sec.
Yes, for sure. So that Post Falls girls distance medley team, which isn't an event that's run at state. Instead, at the 5A level, they do the 4x800, I think is what it is. 4x. And see, this is the part I'm still learning, because in Montana we have the 4x1 and the 4x4, and that's it. that's all Montana does for relays. Yeah, the 4x8 is what they officially run at state. So it's a little bit of a different, distance for everybody. But Kaylin Misner, Kinley McLean, Kaylee Bowl, Anna Peters sets the new school record, 12 minutes, 19.5 seconds. And a shout out to the Coeur d'Alene Press for having that info there. Yeah,
Mhm.
when we talk about 5A track teams that are going to go down and compete at state, I could see Post Falls finishing top 5 in both boys and girls. A lot of things would have to break
Absolutely.
the right way, but I think of all the teams that are going from the north, I think Post Falls has the best chance on both sides to finish the highest.
You know, Coeur d'Alene could be lingering too. They could be in the mix a little bit just with some of the times that they're turning in as of late. But yeah, I agree. I think Post Falls has the definitive chance of the schools up north to have top 5 finishes, both boys and girls. The boys team, you know, we're seeing weather warm up a little bit now, and so we're seeing the times come down. Um, you know, which was to see be expected. It'll be really interesting to see what happens in the next 2 weeks. I look at that. That's kind of like the point in the season where if you're going to start seeing some numbers be shredded, it's going to happen, you know, in the near future. I think, especially with weather warming up and conditions kind of allow that to happen. Um, yeah, I mean, Pasco is a great event. It's a huge meet too, and I mean, you had like schools from Boise there too, like Rocky Mountain. I know was super competitive there this last weekend as well. But that's a good litmus test, I think. Kind of a preemptive look at what state is going to look like. Where the 4x4 team from Post Falls, runs a 4:08. I mean, that's a pretty competitive time. That's going to hold pretty well at state. I mean, that's the number 4 time in the state right now. But if they can shave on those splits a couple seconds off, that's a team that could have a podium finish. So it'll be really interesting on the girls' side how things shake out. And then, District 1, I think, could have a pretty decent showing in the field events for sure. I mean, between Capri Sims and Zoe Kessinger from Lewiston, Kelsey Carroll's been doing pretty well in the disc as well. Capri Sims now in the top 5 in the disc. So there's the field events looking pretty strong for some of the North contenders up here. So, yeah.
For sure. Kinley McLean in the short sprints has a chance to score some points for Post Falls. I don't think anyone's going to touch Anna Peters in the distance races, especially the 2-mile. But Olivia May of Coeur d'Alene, young freshman coming on strong here. She finished right behind Anna Peters in the 1600 at the Pasco Invite.
Yeah.
And she has now the second best time in the whole state, only behind
look at
Anna Peters.
Yeah, and then you got to look at Kytriana Burrell from Coeur d'Alene too. I mean, she's got the number 3 time in the 200, and she ran that this last weekend at Pasco at 26:06. I mean, there's some speed that's going to show up, I think, from the north. I don't know if you have the top heavy teams like Rocky and Boise, but certainly you're going to have some really strong finishes from individual performers for both Post Falls and Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah, Boise is still going to be so hard to topple just because of their strength in numbers, especially in the distance races and in the jumps and in the pole vault. But yes, things are looking good for North Idaho on the girls' side, especially from Post Falls and Coeur d'Alene. And then on the boys' side, I really do think it's Post Falls. And I think this is where Post Falls has a chance to, a lot of things would have to break the right way, but I think they could get a trophy. They could get a top 3 finish. It would be, a lot would have to come together, but I can kind of see it in my head.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the 200, you got Kobe Cameron and Dylan Wolf are right there at 22.66 and 22.69. And then one of them, I mean, Kobe's just a sophomore too. We all know about Trevor Cogley and what he's doing at Lake City, the Boise State commit, but those Post Falls boys, I mean, I know that Coach Etch is really high on what he's got on his team, and especially in the sprints and the relays. The boys relay teams are, catching on a little bit. I think they're getting better week to week. There's some times, though, I mean, just looking at it, they're going to be hard to catch. Like Kuna right now in the 4x2 at 127, that's pretty dang strong. So, I think that it's just going to take consistency from Post Falls to get a podium finish. And, I think Trevor Cogley is he's going to get it. I really do feel he's going to get a couple gold medals at state, but it'll be really interesting to see him kind of scanning through some of the field events that don't necessarily get as much notoriety, but Trevor Miller in the disc for Post Falls and then James White for Lewiston are both in the top 3. And James White's also in top 3 in shot. So, yeah, there's guys up north, District 1 and 2, I think will do pretty well come, 5A state.
Yeah, and Miller is ranked 5th in the shot put currently. That discus throw of 168 feet 6 inches, new PR personal record set at the Pasco Invite. He's not that far behind the leader from Centennial, Kai Twaddle Dunham. Just 4 feet basically. So he could make
Trenton McLean has held the top mark for the high jump all year so far. So
yes, he was tied with a bunch of guys at 6'2", and then he cleared 6'4" at the Lewiston Invite, and nobody else has been able to clear that since. And so Trenton McLean, the sophomore, doing a good job there. And then Alex Shields is also top 10 right now in the triple jump. So I think there's some potential there for Post Falls, certainly. Also, we had to talk about at the Pasco Invite, Rusty Lee from Sandpoint. You want to talk about one of the better all-around individuals in North Idaho. Man, Rusty Lee looking good again.
Yeah, Rusty's been, showing up. We've been talking about in the last few years about his prowess in the 300 hurdles, and he's flipped the switch in the 110. With the leading mark in the state at 14.36 that he set this last weekend. He's burning the field by over a second in the 110 hurdles. So, if you look at what's going on 4A wise, you got 3. Sorry, I was looking at District 1 and 2. So he's beating the District 1 and 2 kids by a full second with the next closest cohort. But he's still got a good half second on Augustus Haynes from Ridgeview. So Sandpoint Rusty he's got the top mark in the 300 hurdles now as well. Lakeland still has the top 4x1. So I think that there's going to be state track is well represented from 1 and 2. I just don't know if we're going to get the team title. Is going to be just so dang hard to attain, I think, for any of these groups.
Yeah, definitely. So Rusty Lee battled the best. Augustus Haynes. Ridgeview went up to the Pasco Invite last week, which is unusual for a team in the Boise area. But and those two went mano a mano in the 110 hurdles, and Rusty Lee ran basically half a second faster, 14:36 to 14:86, and he now has basically more than half a second on Haynes in the 300 hurdles. And so, Rusty Lee, look out. But at the same time, Moscow has a couple of good hurdlers in the Skinners. Zach Skinner and Caleb Skinner are both top 10 in both of those. So
they're not going to catch Rusty necessarily right now, but as far as getting points and showing up at state, I think they're certainly going to get some team points for the Bears.
Got to give a little love to Lakeland as well. At the very first invite of the year, the Sweeney Invite in Lewiston, the Lakeland 4x1 relay team of Thomas Calder, Nick Noel, Terry Edwards, and Weston Saputsky ran a 43:41. Nobody has touched it since in the 4A ranks.
That's fast.
Well, and we've talked about this, especially with all these football guys and the speed that Lakeland has had on the football field the past several years. And you kept going, just wait till you see him on the track. And we're seeing it.
And you look at like who's missing from, that lineup too, is that they don't have John Cornish. And it's like, you kind of look at they haven't let up. Like, that's just the thing with this lineup that, I look at what they're doing, that 4x1 relay team is just, that's a blazing fast time for a 4A team. If they can turn it, if they can get under that 43:29, I look at that and that's almost like an untouchable mark, I think, for the rest of the season. If they can, turn times like that towards state.
Yeah, for sure. Caleb Skinner also performing well from Moscow in the long jump, in the triple jump, second best triple jump mark in 4A this year. The pole vaulting duo of Klein Fragoso and Slate Fragoso from Sandpoint in the top 5 in the pole vault. And then Preston Jeffs of Lakeland had the top shot put throw for a while. He's been surpassed a couple of times, but he's thrown it over 50 feet, which is major league, 51 feet, 2.5 inches. And he's also in the top 10 in the discus as well. So that's Preston Jeffs from Lakeland. He's a great offensive tackle as well on the football field. And then in the high jump, Rusty Lee is currently 4th. He's cleared 6'1" from Sandpoint. So a lot of good individuals from up north.
Yeah, no, there really is. You can get into 3A too and start picking that apart as well. Aisha Abubakari from Bonners Ferry has been doing really, really well too for the Badgers. So there's a lot of bright spots statewide, I think, right now. Individuals that are really making their name known in the track circuit.
Yeah, Aisha Abubakari in the throwing events, top shot put throw, top discus throw, her shot put throw in particular is 5 feet ahead of the next person, which is her teammate sophomore Helen Ray. So that's
Yeah.
In fact, Bonner's Ferry has 3 of the top
3
4 shot
in
put
shot
throws.
and disc. Yeah.
Yeah, in the 3A ranks.
Yes.
And then Bonner's has 4 of the top 7 in the disc. So I don't know what's going on up there with the throwers at Bonner's
It's in
Ferry.
the water, man. I'm telling you.
Man, that's pretty impressive. And it's because Timberlake has had pretty much, really good throwers the past couple of years. And so,
Well, and Aisha is also a 3rd in the long jump right now. So
yeah.
just a good athlete.
Yeah, pretty major league. And then, when you talk about 3A boys, you have to talk about Jacob Barnhart from Timberlake in the distance races. He's really been performing well this year. And we kind of forget about this school sometimes because they don't compete in every sport. But Coeur d'Alene Charter in the distance races as well, usually really, really good. And specifically this year, McKenna Kozela on the girls' side. She was your cross-country champion in the 3A ranks. She's also kind of the favorite in the 3A distance races also. So keep an eye on Coeur d'Alene Charter as well.
Yeah, and Timberlake's got the, Caius Tebby in the 110 hurdles with the top 3A time for the boys as well. So,
yeah,
there's going to be a decent showing, I think, from the Tigers on the boys' side at the state meet for sure.
Yeah, a lot of good track and field action, and we'll try to bring you kind of the highlights each week on what stood out to us. And we'll keep doing that as the spring sports season progresses. Let's talk a little baseball because we've had a lot of crazy activity. I feel like we got to start in the White Pine League all the way down at the 1A level. You and I were looking at the standings before.
Down is up, up is down.
It's wild, man. We wouldn't expect any less though, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing 6th place swings on teams just on a given weekend. It's nuts. But we asked hey, what's Clearwater Valley going to do? They've had so many rainouts or snowouts, early in the year, and they've been able to get some games, and they're on a roll, 5-0 in conference play. I mean, they're 8-6 overall right now. But they're doing it with pitching and defense. I mean, they're only giving up 5 runs a game. So, in high school ball, that's going to keep you competitive. So, but you look at it, we're talking, singing the praises of Kendrick. Kendrick's the best pitching and defensive team in 1A baseball, and they're sitting 1-3 in the league and 6-5 overall. It's just, you look at this conference, it's what in the world is going on? But yeah, it's just it's a wacky league.
Yeah, and Clearwater Valley has won a lot of tight games. They beat Kendrick 9-8 at the South Fork Slugfest earlier this year. That didn't count in the conference standings. They swept Kendrick last night 3-1 and 5-2. Those are relatively tight games. They beat Potlatch on Saturday. Sorry, I was looking at the Lapwai game. They beat Lapwai 20-0 on Friday, and then they played Potlatch on Saturday and won 3-2 in 10 innings. So they're finding ways to win.
Yeah, no, that league. I mean, you look going into districts, that's going to be, the district tournament could be better than the state tournament. I mean, I don't really want to say that, but I mean, in realism, there's a solid 5 teams, 6 teams there that are all worthy of playing at state, in my opinion.
Let's be honest. The semifinals at the 1A state tournament is going to be all White Pine League teams anyways. So whatever. It's going to be just like district.
I don't know. Vision Charter is averaging 17 runs per game, but
the competition level down there is just not the same. And I got to go on the Treasure Valley Prepcast after we're done with this, and but it is.
Is that Logan doing it with you?
Yes.
Yeah, then just roll Logan.
Right?
Rub his nose in it.
That's just the reality of it. I did see as well the state 1A baseball tournament got moved. It got moved up earlier in the week. So it's
really,
it's going to be on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday now. So
oof. But it's at Church Field.
We might have to amend broadcast plans there.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that offline. Yes. Yeah. We'll talk about that offline. But the 1A state baseball tournament is now Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. There at the end of May. Okay, let's talk about, so Clearwater Valley's 5-0 in the league. Prairie is 5-0 in the league. And wouldn't you know it, who's coming to Kuski this Thursday night? The Prairie Pirates for the first of 2 regular season matchups. They'll also play in Cottonwood on May 2nd. Winner of this will be in the driver's seat.
Yeah, I mean, but does the driver's seat matter in this league? I mean, it does and it doesn't. I mean, gosh, it's just so tough. I mean, you really look realistically, the top 6 teams are all state caliber teams. They really are. We'll find out who's a pretender in that list. I don't want to, poo-poo the parade for Lewis County. They're 2-2 in league, but they haven't played that top half of that conference yet. So it'll be interesting to see what, that co-op team can do. Troy with run production, though, they're a dangerous team. I mean, they're averaging 11 runs a game offensively. That's a lurking giant, I think, a little bit. They did lose a few guys from last year's roster, but they returned quite a few. So
yeah,
pitching and defense wins championships, though. And I look at that, and I'm still not counting out Kendrick down the stretch. I really am not.
Yeah, and I misspoke earlier. Prairie is 5-1 in league play. They did lose to Kendrick earlier this year. So Kendrick is 2-3 in conference. Prairie is 5-1. Troy is 3-1. And Troy comes to Kuski at the very end of the regular season, Saturday, May 6th, for a high noon doubleheader with the Rams. You could be looking at the White Pine Championship. Possibly.
It could be like 85 degrees in Kuski that day, too. Just the weather, the way it is in late May up here. It could be hot, and you could see the ball flying around the park there. That could be an absolute slugfest.
Yeah, Josh Bradley doing a great job with the Clearwater Valley baseball team, to be sure. Let's talk about, I wanted to highlight a couple of 2A standouts in baseball really quickly as well from earlier this week. In the 2A Central Idaho League, when you look at the standings right now, Orofino still head of the class, 2-0. It's like, when are we going to start playing some conference games, y'all? Like, Orofino's only played 2 league games. Grangeville's only played 1. Like, let's get it going.
Grangeville had snow yesterday, so
yeah, it is. So here's Grangeville's schedule the rest of the way. Saturday doubleheader with Kellogg, Tuesday doubleheader with Orofino, Thursday doubleheader with St. Mary's, Saturday doubleheader with Orofino, and then Monday to wrap up the season, 1 game with St. Mary's. So it's going to be a mad sprint to the finish line here for Grangeville. But the Bulldogs are 1-0. They got a tight 1-0 win over Kellogg last night. Can't get any closer than that. And Sam Lindsley delivered on the mound, nearly threw a no-hitter. He had a no-hitter going into the 7th and final inning. Reed Whatcott from Kellogg got a little base hit to spoil the no-no, but it's a 1-hitter for Lindsley with 17 strikeouts.
Yeah, no, that's a dominant performance. And I was looking at the run differential too. I mean, they're defensive. I mean, we know Orofino's really good, right? We kind of settled on that one, that we understand everybody's on the same page with that. But Grangeville could be one of those deadly teams, I think, coming down the stretch, just because they've got such good pitching. I mean, if they can keep, runners off the base paths, they're going to get themselves in ball games, especially if they can play good small ball and run the bases smart. Yeah, they could find themselves, battling their way for a possible state berth, which would be huge for that program.
And I look at Kellogg, and they've got the potential, right? They've been a good program over the past several years, and the stats say that this should be a winning team. They're scoring 8.3 runs per game. Now they're allowing 6.5. That's kind of on the high side. I'm sure they'd like to see that lowered a bit, but they've got a plus 1.5 run differential, and yet they're 6-7 and 1-3 in league. Yeah, that's baseball, man.
Baseball is one of those sports that just doesn't make sense, because you can have one game they'll lose like 14-3, and it totally whacks out your stats. But and then you come back and win the next night like 1-0, or like 2-1 or something like that. So yeah, I mean, you just kind of have to like let this one settle. I mean, you look statewide, and it's Cole Valley and Nampa Christian, Firth is right in there, and then Orofino. I mean, I kind of look statewide. Those are your, in my opinion, the difference makers. But it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out, as we get towards May.
Yeah, and Priest River is kind of playing not a full league schedule, so I think it's kind of going to be like the other sports where they'll go into districts as the number 5 seed overall. But Kellogg did play Priest River on Monday night, got a 27-5 victory. In the game, Logan Smith, a sophomore, went 4 for 5 with a home run, 5 RBIs, 4 runs scored, and he drew a walk in his other at bat. So all 5 times he came up, he got on base. That's also pretty impressive.
Yeah, no, that's a good showing. So, yeah, I mean, as a coach, you would take that. Do they call them coaches in high school, or is it managers too?
No, it's coach. Yeah, it's
Okay.
coach. Yeah. When we're going to just Skip. Hey, Skip.
Skipper.
Yeah. So that's and then you wanted to touch on Lake City sweeps Coeur d'Alene last night in a 5A Twin Valley.
Yeah, 5A Lake City showing up, and they've been, what a week or two it's been for Lake City athletics and spring sports. You look at what the T-Wolves are doing in softball too. I mean, we'll talk about that in a minute, but the baseball team is just, the bats have come alive. They've gotten great defense. They've had great pitching. And they're looking at their record right now. They're sitting at 13-4 overall, 12-0 in league. That is absolutely, if you're a first year coach, you're like looking at that record year one and you're like, this is a dream season right now. Especially with a team they thought that was going to be maybe in the middle of the league for most of the riders and everybody in this area. But yeah, they're just playing really good ball right now. Almost a 3-run run differential. So they're doing it defensively, but also offensively as well, averaging just over 7 runs a game.
Yep. Who else has been having a good having a good time? Bonner's Ferry, man. The Badgers in baseball. Last Friday, they take on Timberlake in a doubleheader. Now they had split the first doubleheader of the season, and basically the setup was if they split again, they were going to have to play a single one-off game at the very end of the regular season in May to determine the regular season championship, right? Because in a 2-team league, if they each went 2-2, you got to figure it out somehow, right? So they would have met for a basically, one game winner take all division regular season championship.
The Denslow Cup.
Right. And I'm sure that's exactly what Bonner's. Oh, great. We get to play Timberlake in extra time. We don't already get to play them enough, but Bonner's Ferry took care of business. They sweep the Tigers. And really, then they parlay that into a Saturday sweep of St. Mary's as well in non-conference action. And all of a sudden, Bonner's Ferry has picked up a little bit of momentum as we're going here. They're 8-6 overall, but 3-1 in the league, and that's the important number.
Yeah, and their bats are waking up too. I think that's the big part. We knew that they've got some players in their lineup, but they're able to get the bats alive, and they're striking the ball pretty well. I mean, you look at that conference, obviously between the two teams in the league. Timberlake's a good ball club. I mean, there's a reason they split in that first series. But I look at what the Badgers are doing down the stretch, and I still like Bonner's Ferry winning that conference. I think that they could do pretty well at state too, just based on who they have, on their roster. But their schedule's actually relatively difficult if you really look at it, even though they're playing some of the smaller schools. I mean, there's a reason they're 8-6. Like, they've played decent teams and they haven't really picked up. I got to look at the rest of their schedule, but what they've had on their schedule. I mean, Orfino, they picked up a loss there, but they beat Weiser, beat Grangeville. They picked up a loss, which this one to Grangeville is kind of puzzling. And then losing to Sandpoint, getting swept and blanked in that doubleheader. If they can keep this momentum rolling though, because they're averaging over 10 runs a game in their last 5 games, that's impressive. So we'll see what they can do. They got Priest River coming up on Friday, and then Kellogg and Timberlake to finish up the regular season. So it'll be interesting what they can do. I think that they could really get on a run here and very easily win out. I mean, that they could go into state with a really good looking record. It's only six losses on the season.
Yeah. Got to give a shout out to Blake Rice over the weekend. He pretty much holds down shortstop for the Badgers. He hit 3 home runs across the 4 games. He had 1 against Timberlake, and then he had 2 against St. Mary's on Saturday for the 4-game weekend set. Blake Rice, 17 at bats. He was 9 for 17. That is batting over 500 on the weekend. He had 3 home runs, 3 doubles, 3 singles, 12 RBIs, 9 runs scored. So every time he got a hit, he came around to score. And he was also hit by a pitch. 3 home runs in 4 games. Blake Rice.
Have you ever seen Blake in person?
Yes, big tall guy.
He's a big kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a big kid. I mean, there's a reason he's crushing homers right now. He's hitting dingers, and yeah, that's an impressive feat. I mean, you look at that in high school, you're able to bat in the stretch like that, hit over 500 with the run production, that is insanity. That's awesome. Hopefully he's on your list as far as heavy hitters.
Oh yes, he made the list this week. Yes, I had a couple of Bonners Ferry folks email me and go, "Hey, you should probably put this guy on your list." And the reason I'm really excited about Bonners Ferry is, yeah, they can swing the bats, but I think at the top of the rotation still, they've got 2 really good. They've got a nice 1-2 combo with Bateman and Tegan Banning. And it's a righty lefty type thing. So they each throw from opposite sides, and that can be tough for teams, especially that haven't seen Bonners Ferry at all.
Yeah. No, I mean, you look at it. I mean, obviously Sandpoint was able to put the bats to them, in their games, but outside of that series, I mean, dropping the puzzling one to Grangeville, I think if you put those 2 teams against each other again, Bonners Ferry very likely wins that game, but. Especially the way they're hitting. Like I said, the bats woke up. They were a little sleepy earlier in the year, but they're on a tear right now. Their lowest production run-wise in the last 6 games is 10 runs. I don't care who you are. That's impressive.
Yep. So we'll keep an eye on Bonners Ferry as they're just rolling along. And on the softball side, Lake City just keeps rolling. 10-2. Overall, 7-1 in conference play. I will tell you, I just put together and right before we hopped on to record the latest softball coaches poll for this week, Scaggs, and at the 5A level, it was all Boise teams. Yeah. Nobody from the East, which Thunder Ridge deserves to be ranked.
Thunder Ridge is 15-1.
And nobody from the North. And I think Lake City should probably be ranked in there.
Sure. Thunder Ridge is 15-1 and giving up just like under 3 runs a game. Like, come on.
Their only loss.
I'll give Sean Kane some love over there, like on the East Idaho Prepcast. Like, he's got a like genuine beef there.
Yeah, all Boise teams in that top 5 in the coaches poll. So, interesting stuff.
I mean, it is a good conference. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, I like what the T-Wolves are doing down the stretch. Hill Bodak is playing insane ball right now for the T-Wolves. And, that's a big reason why they're, on the run that they're on, 7-1 in conference and 10-2 overall. They're playing really good ball and, beating good teams in impressive fashion too.
Yep. And then when you look at softball, there's kind of a separation in 1A, the White Pine League. I wanted to touch on it real quick. To me, there's a clear top 4: Potlatch, Kendrick, Clearwater Valley, Genesee. And then you have Lapway, Lewis County, Kamei, all kind of on the other side of the coin. And really, Potlatch is the favorite, right? They've been the premier team the past couple of years, but I'm kind of looking at Clearwater Valley. Jessica Kitola is a great pitcher for the Rams in the circle and can be a difference maker. So I don't know. Potlatch did just beat Clearwater Valley on Saturday, but they were both very tight games. The first one was 4-3 in 9 innings, so it went extras. And the second game was 2-1. So a pair of 1-run wins. So I think, the gap between CV and Potlatch is pretty narrow.
Yeah. Sorry. And I'm looking at another monitor. So if people are like, Ryan just stares off out of the space during the Prepcast, I'm looking at my second monitor. So, but yeah, no, it's that conference, I think, is deceptive. I mean, you look at the run differential and it makes sense. I mean, Potlatch, what they're doing though is that not only do they pitch well, but they hit extremely well. I mean, averaging nearly 14 runs a game. Their run differential of 11 runs. That's going to win you some titles. Like, I don't care who you are. That's impressive feat. And then Clearwater Valley, I think, is the next most impressive stat, but they're sitting at third in conference, only giving up barely 2 runs a game. So, if they can get some offense put together, that team that's a lethal lineup. Kendrick they hit the snot out of the ball. Let's just be honest about that. I mean, hitting nearly 14 runs a game, and Genesee too. So, I mean, you look at that conference, if pitching's off one night, either of those teams will make you pay. So it'll be interesting to see how things shake out. I think for second place, I mean, I look at first, Potlatch kind of has that stranglehold, but Clearwater Valley with the pitching, the way they've been able to throw off the mound, I think is what's going to set them apart down the stretch if they're going to be able to handcuff some of those better hitters.
Yeah. So basically, over their last 4 games, Kendrick is 4-0 with a pair of wins over Lapwai and Lewis County. And in those 4 games, they outscored their opposition 87 to, let me do the math here, 87 to 18.
It's like Kendrick's football team.
Right.
We haven't seen that since football season.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So that's impressive. That's really impressive.
Kendrick gets Potlatch at Potlatch Thursday. But to me, that is kind of the last opportunity for Potlatch because they've already played CB twice and got the 2 wins there. They've played Genesee once. I want to say, let me double check that. Yeah, they've played Genesee once. And so they played Genesee at the end of the year. So if somebody's going to catch Potlatch, Kendrick and Genesee are probably going to have to beat the Loggers each.
Here's the game that I'm looking forward to, and it's a non-conference one. Friday, April 21st.
Yeah, at St. Mary's.
St. Mary's and Potlatch. You got the Loggers and the Lumberjacks going off. That's going to be a dandy of a game. So, yeah, that should be a fun one to watch and keep our eye on because Tacey Watkins is still spinning it right now.
Yes. We have to get in our obligatory Tacey Watkins reference here on the Prepcast.
This is the Tacey Watkins Prepcast, also with other North Idaho sports. Yes.
Right. So that's what's happening in softball. All right. Before we duck out of here, there's been murmurings going on about this new law that's going into effect this summer. It was passed by the Idaho State Legislature, and essentially it's going to make every public high school in Idaho, it's going to make every public high school adapt and adopt open enrollment policies. Now,
yeah,
probably 2/3 of the schools in the state already have an open enrollment policy. Pocatello used to have it for a really long time. They just did away with it. But now basically it's going to be, I'm going to school A and I get 3 weeks in and all of a sudden I want to switch schools. And I'm going to be able to. So the big question is, how will that affect athletics? And the answer is, we're not sure.
We don't know. Yeah, we don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's I mean, they didn't even address that at the recent meeting. And as far as I checked notes from the IHSAA meeting a couple weeks ago, and we talked about classification stuff that they had discussed, but nothing was discussed about this open enrollment thing. I think they're hoping that it's going to be business as usual with the current transfer rules that are in place. However, now that open enrollment is a state law, and you can't restrict a child's access to education in school, from school to school, you could flat say, like, IHSA historically said what, like, you have to have a good reason to move. You have to be like moving from school A to town B, and it has to make sense in order for us to grant you access to transfer. To where now state law says it doesn't matter. Like, I can go wherever I want. So how are you going to restrict me? So it almost looks like, are we going to see a transfer portal of sorts in Idaho high schools? And I think we'll really see it. If we see it anywhere, it's going to probably happen down south in the Treasure Valley is where it's going to probably rear its nasty head if it's allowed. But it'll be interesting to see what the board does with that access, because of now it has legal ramifications. Is there going to be litigious action that could take place if a parent doesn't get access for their kid to play varsity athletics?
Yeah, and that's the big thing is the IHSAA can try to enforce what they have, but parents could easily come in and say, hey, open enrollment and I want my kid to play now. And I don't know how that gets sorted out. The attorneys are probably going, oh yeah, we'll take care of it. We'll collect our hefty fees, and we got into the wrong line of work, Ryan.
Yeah, you can charge me a $5,000 retainer to do this prepcast, like.
Yeah.
So,
oh man.
No, it's it's going to be interesting to see, and if they don't address it soon, I mean, things could get really interesting come June, because we're not far from June right now, and we're 6 weeks away from where we're going to have summer practices opening up and camps being able to open up, and school's going to be out. So like, you're going to be able to make your decision last day of school. It's going to be good now for 2023, 2024. Things could get real interesting really fast if they don't make a decision quickly about how to handle this issue.
Yeah, and there's not an easy answer. So
no, there's not. I don't envy the position at all. Like that's a tough one to match.
I can certainly appreciate the IHSAA wanting to take their time on this because it is a delicate topic, to be sure. Specifically for North Idaho, I think how it could affect things is not necessarily kids going from one North Idaho school to another. Like maybe that'll happen, but I think more those kids in Washington.
Yeah,
you could come on over and play right away. Let's do it.
And that's that. I mean, we've seen kids from Idaho go to Washington and play at like Gonzaga Prep. Like that's happened, and that's happened, in the last 10 years. I mean, Lakeland's already open enrollment anyways. Like Lakeland School District, it's not going to make a difference. What I look at is how is it going to affect the levies? So with this new law, where's the funding coming from? Because you already have a levy that failed in Coeur d'Alene, last month. The levy failed in the Lakeland School District last month, so they're having to rerun these. Now with this like looming thing there in the picture as far as funding athletics, is that going to make people change their mind as far as Post Falls past theirs? Is Post Falls going to reap some of these benefits if they're not being threatened with having JV athletics being canceled? So it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out.
Yeah. One last point. If I'm like a soccer player and Washington has a spring season and Idaho has a fall season, what's going to stop me from living in Washington, playing in the spring, and then going, I'm going to head to Idaho, play a little fall soccer. And that happened during COVID, where Washington moved that one year. They moved all of their sports to the spring. Remember, football, basketball, everything.
Every season was only 4 weeks long.
Yeah. There were some kids that hopped the border and played, I believe, at Priest River. And then they hopped back and played spring basketball in Washington. And I had a fan from a school send me an email and go, hey, this can't be legal. They can't do this. I was like, it's Washington's problem. They're in Washington now.
The WIA has got different rules.
Yeah. What do you
a whole different set of rules over there. So,
yeah,
we talk about, we think we've got enrollment issues here in Idaho. Yeah. You need to go over there and look at what's going on down I-90. It's a different animal.
In more ways than one. There's a lot of stuff I'm glad doesn't happen here that happens in Washington. So anyways, before we get too far off the path,
no, we're good.
I'll bring him back in and tell you that we will have another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast for you next week, where we will once again break down the biggest stories in District 1 and 2 athletics in the state of Idaho. For Ryan Scaggs, I'm Brandon Baney. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time on IdahoSports.com.